should explain the purpose of this symposiums, roundtable discussions, or forums, whatever we call at the end of every conferences, or when we have conferences, we try to select a very sexy topic so that we can keep people alive and inside the room before we go for the Greek night. Sometimes it's successful, other times it's not so successful. In terms of attendance, people get out and they have other better things to do. Now, I chose, of course, the only input that I have to these conferences is most of the times I select the topic for the roundtable discussions, and I'm the one that select the professors. That a criterion actually is to get people from different countries, so we can see the different perspectives. And there's another criterion: we like people that they are old. And someone said, how do I define old? Old is someone that is older than me, by definition. So old was like that. It was a moving threshold. So that's the idea. And of course, these people, because even though I don't believe in experience, more important is the analytical power. So a young guy with analytical power is stronger than someone with experience. Nevertheless, experience does add something to our scientific endeavor. Now, fake news and fake facts, I have a subtitle, Euro-X, just to make it more sexy, because that's what it is. Actually, I can put Frexit, since we had the elections yesterday. But as the first speaker, I don't know his presentation, but I should say as an introduction, 2,500 years ago, the Peloponnesian War, around 415 BCE, there was a change in course because of fake news. Someone accused Alcibiades that took off the heads of the Hermes columns that were used as a street indicators, and it turned out that was fake news, but it had disastrous effects on the Athenian army, because there was the expedition in Syracuse. So it's nothing new, the fake news. Some will find out, even though we don't send to the Greek newspapers, the Greek press, some will find out from the international internet, so to speak, and then they call to interview me about what we're going to say about Greece. I say nothing. We're not going to say anything about Greece, nobody cares, I said. But they continue and ask me, what are we going to discuss? I say the problem is not fake news, I think the problem is fake audience. I mean, it's very hard for me to be persuaded, and a lot of people that I've discussed throughout the year with professors, they are, as I say, they have second thoughts. When even myself or someone learns, said that, BBC reported that. I'm using some very respected, they question, they search if they have an interest. But what surprised me is that people are willing to accept lies, because that's what fake news is actually, lies, if they serve their own interest. And so they're not so naive. And the experience from the Greek politics is ubiquitous everywhere. I was interviewed down from Russia today, but now it's the masters of the fake news around the world. And I remember, how when you interviewed, they put you on the line, and then you hear it, and they will praise our prime minister, who is a fake by himself. And they present him as being a movie star, how beautiful he is, and young, and all this. They didn't say that he was lying and he was useless, but I said, I'm sorry, but I'm going to change, I'm going to destroy the picture, because the guy is a fake. He lies. And he knows that he lies. A lot of people knew in Greece that he was lying. But they had a secret agenda themselves. And when I was discussing with them, they were thinking that if they get the power, so they get positions, and they didn't really care what they were saying, whether it was fake or not. Anyway, that's as an introduction. Fake audience to keep, but fake news not only in politics, it's in health, it's in business, it's in sports, it's in leisure and recreation, fake hotels here, whatever there's on the board. I mean, if you see a picture, for example, from this, even including this hotel, you see all their rooms, you see that what you see is, oh, this is a perfect. When you go and see it, you have second thought. So fake is all around, and it's more important in business. You can see pictures, for example, photographs, you have a girlfriend, and they do the Facebook said the book, when you see her, then you have second thoughts about the external beauty, but still you can like the brains. Now, our first speaker is from Malta. That's the most important criteria, as I said. He's going to talk about H. Mark, Associate Professor at the University of Malta. Fake news is nothing new and nothing that can be fixed. You have 10 minutes to impress us. You can do fake news impressions.
A fake presentation. Thank you very much for that introduction. I should point out that while I'm teaching at the University of Malta, I'm actually not from Canada, so I am from many countries. I've taught in Singapore for 3 years, in Fiji for 3 years, so I've been around. But I thought I should provide a bit of context for this roundtable discussion with a little bit of a history of fake news, because if you study journalism history like I have, you realize that while fake news is the latest flavor of the month, there's a bit of a panic about it, what with the election of Donald Trump and the Brexit referendum. Fake news is really nothing new. I actually heard recently, somebody told me that fake news goes back to the cave paintings in prehistoric man. I haven't checked that out, so it could not be independently verified. But I'd like to go first with probably the most famous fake news story ever, going back to the days of the penny press in the United States. Some of you may have heard of the first tabloid newspapers that were published, and they were sold for 1 cent, unlike those newspapers which were 5 or 6 cents. And they were targeted at the first commuters in New York City, first on the horse-drawn buses, the omnibuses, and then the first subway riders. So the New York Sun was one of the first penny papers, and no doubt the most successful, in part because of a series of articles they ran in 1835, quoting fake research from a fake journal, the Edinburgh Journal of Science. Supposedly, some scientists had set up a very powerful telescope at the Cape of Good Hope. This is before they could actually tell what was on the moon. They still thought it was made of green cheese or something. But what they saw with this very powerful telescope was a lot of furry, winged men resembling bats. In fact, apparently this is the genesis of the Batman character that came a little bit later. And so they had, and this was in the days before they could reproduce photographs on printing presses, and so they would have the artist's depiction of what they saw on the moon, this race of furry, winged Batmen. And it caused a sensation, as I'm sure you can imagine. The stories ran for 4 days before they were exposed as a hoax. And they did wonders for the fledgling Sun's circulation. It had been 15,000 and it rose to 20,000. And they never lost the extra readers, even after the story was exposed as a fake. And back then, newspapers used to borrow, quote unquote, freely from each other. And so a lot of their competitors lifted this series. And when it was exposed as a hoax, they were humiliated. And the Sun, I believe it's been revived recently. Isn't that the one owned by Jared Kushner? But it went out of business in the 1960s. It was merged with a bunch of the other New York newspapers. Here you can see one of the front pages of the early Sun. It was a very small newspaper, about the size of an A4 piece of paper, or 8.5 by 11 if you're from North America. And it was designed for the commuter to read on the bus or the subway. Fake news for political advantage was also nothing new. Going back to the 19th century, a very famous incident which has taken on recent significance. The Ithaca Chronicle published in 1844 an extract from a supposed book, it was a fake book, by a fake Baron Ruhrbeck, who wrote in this book about how James Polk, who was then running for president, had branded slaves with a hot iron. Well, of course, this wasn't true, but it was republished by Whig newspapers. This was the other main party. This is before the Republican Party came along, the party of Lincoln. And the Democratic press, though, soon exposed it as fake news. There was no such person as a Baron Ruhrbeck, nor any book by him. But the name Ruhrbeck, ever since, has been used to denote fake news about a political candidate on the eve of the election, too late to refute it. And there have been numerous examples in Canada of a Ruhrbeck, as it's now called. Then, of course, we come in the late years of the 19th century to yellow journalism, which was named after the first color cartoon character, the Yellow Kid. Yellow apparently was the hardest color for the printers to get right, and so they experimented on it using this cartoon character who had a large apron, a large area for them to use yellow ink. It became wildly popular in Joseph Pulitzer's New York World. In fact, by the middle of the 1890s, he was the toast of the town. But then, of course, another very well-heeled newspaper baron came along from the West Coast named William Randolph Hearst. Started the New York Journal, hired away most of Pulitzer's staff and also his artist. Pulitzer had another artist draw the kid, and apparently there were two of them for a time. And so the Yellow Kid lends his name to a whole era of fake news. In fact, so much fake news that what started out as a newspaper war between Hearst and Pulitzer turned into an actual shooting war because of the fake news. So here we have Pulitzer on the left. He was a Hungarian immigrant of limited English skills when he arrived to fight in the Civil War as a mercenary. And Hearst on the right, it was from gold money. His father literally discovered the mother lode in gold mining in California, and so he could buy any newspaper he wanted. So the story goes that Hearst sent a reporter and an artist to Cuba, where there was an insurrection going on. The Cubans were fighting for independence from the Spanish, and the artist, Remington, cabled that there's nothing going on here, wish to return. The supposed cable that came back was, please remain, you furnish the pictures, I'll furnish the war. And so legend is that Hearst, through promulgating fake news, started the Spanish-American War. A lot of the images that were sent back of the suffering of the Cuban people were apparently quite over-dramatized. For example, the malnutrition of some of the Cuban children. There was a famous incident where an American woman was strip searched on a Spanish ship. Well, it didn't happen on deck. And it wasn't done by men. It was apparently done in private by a matron, but according to the artist's conception, it happened in full view of everyone. And this, of course, caused outrage amongst the American people clamoring to go to war against the Spanish. But of course, the precipitating event was the explosion aboard the warship Maine, which was anchored in Havana Harbor, there supposedly to protect American interests. Well, it turns out apparently it was a Might have been a spark from the furnish that ignited the magazine, which was right next to it. A bit of a design flaw. But according to the newspapers, this was an act of treachery by the Spanish. There's the artist's conception of a mine underneath the warship, which probably blew it up. And this, of course, ripped up war fever and influenced the president of the day to declare war. And that's when things really got good, when war was declared. Here you can see some of the front pages. The spirit of war pervades the breasts of all Americans. Spanish treachery, crisis is at hand. And some of the headlines were so big, they didn't have type large enough for them, so they had to have artists to draw them. So they would have a huge 120-point line, war, and then declared, and in between, may be, in smaller type, war may be declared. They sold millions, literally up to 2 million copies a day, and they could have sold more, but they ran out of paper. Okay, so the Spanish-American War was finally declared, and it was great because, of course, Cuba's just, 30 or 40 nautical miles from Miami, so the newspaper sent over correspondents about a boatload. Hearst's journal, many more than the World, because, of course, he was very well heeled. They spent $3,000 a day covering it, sent 24 correspondents in a dozen boats. Hearst went over himself and not only covered the war, but captured Spanish regiments, things like this. The World could only afford to send over six reporters, but they openly rewrote some of the stories in the journal. So the journal, to prevent this, they planted a false story, the death of an Austrian artillery officer. This is fake news. And his name was Felipe W. News, but if you read it backwards from the W, it reads, "We pilfered the news." So of course, the world was quite humiliated when this was exposed. But my favorite story is about the fictitious Cuban Amazon Brigade.
1 minute.
1 minute in battle. They show no mercy. They hew with their machetes and shout in such a way as to alarm any opponent. And yet, when the fight is over, they are as tender to their foes as to their friends. I had to.
Okay, finish.
Thank you.
Thank you. You will use your last minute to fix it.
I could have gotten it
During the discussion, there is a joke in 1950s, 1960s in Britain, this little guy that sells newspapers in downtown Athens, and then he announced, buy the newspaper, a big accident, 44 victims. So the guy goes and buys the newspaper. Just steps around and says, buy the newspaper, 45 the victims. So, Lee Arps, professor of media studies from the Purdue University, fake news, real, is he here? Yeah, okay, fake news, real problems, spin and propaganda from Clinton to Trump. So, you bring us up to date.
Oh, yes. Thank you to Mark for doing this. When he said he was going to talk about the history of fake news, I thought I wasn't going to have anything to talk about, so.
10 minutes.
I actually want to talk, first I just want to mention that our concern with fake news sometimes distracts us from real problems. Tonight when you're at the Greek dinner, just think about, since last night when you were at your Greek dinner, 25,000 children starved to death in the world. That's a real problem.
So it's a good appetite.
1 million refugees in this region of the world. The U.S. is currently at war in 7 different countries. 8 people in the world own 50% of the wealth. There are drones killing civilians in 7 countries almost every day of the week. And I can't begin to talk about climate change. When I think of fake news, I like what you said at the beginning. The fake news is really fake olds, if you want to change the news to olds, because fake news has been around a long time. In fact, in the United States, history textbooks that are printed by McGraw-Hill and Hope Mifflin give a story of the United States where slavery is largely non-existent, where Hiroshima didn't happen because it was a decision by Truman, but it happened out of a defensive posture, and that the war in Iraq was directly related to 9/11. That's in our history books, and millions of kids in the United States are learning that every single day. When I was at lunch today, I was talking to two colleagues, and I recognized immediately that what they have learned in their history books in other countries has a different image, which is much more favorable of the U.S. than my own image of the favor towards the U.S., which means in their history books, the same kind of fake news is happening. Do you remember the war in Vietnam, the Gulf of Tonkin? You're talking about the Spanish Civil War. In my lifetime, the Gulf of Tonkin. It did not happen. It never happened. In Nicaragua, the United States began the Contra War. Why? Because they had real photos of Russian ships going to Nicaragua with Russian MiGs. And the U.S. Reagan says, we have to stop this. And they began arming the Contras. Fake news has been around a long, long time. I would just say that this is not by accident. There's two problems. One, who produces the fake news, and then who believes it. And it's not the same problem. It's one thing to castigate people. If I believed everything was on Fox News or CNN, I would agree with what those people that watch it believe. So the larger question is who produces it and where does it come from? And we certainly can castigate the media, and I'm sure there will be time to do that before we're done today, and some of us have already done it at the conference. But I just want to bring this to your attention because this is not a conspiracy theory. I would argue that this is normalcy theory. Normalcy theory. When Clinton came to office, he established the International Public Information Center, the IPI, which basically was a propaganda arm against the to the American people. Remember the Al-Shifra missile attack when Clinton was in office? It was an act of terror. The United States was not at war with the Sudan. He sent a missile to an aspirin factory and killed people because he claimed they were making some possible drug that might be used for some chemical attack. When Bush came to office, the Office of Strategic Information, the OSI, the New York Times got onto this. Rumsfeld said, we'll cancel this office. He took the sign off the door, put a different sign on the door, and the OSI kept doing what it was doing before. Remember the first Gulf War and the incubator babies? There were no incubator babies, but they were all over nightly news, so the American people would know immediately how evil Hussein was and how uncivilized he was. It was a propaganda campaign by the Rendon Group, which worked for the state and White House to create this fake news. Or the last Gulf War, which was based upon what? The connection with 9/11? The weapons of mass destruction that did not exist, and the New York Times won Pulitzer Prizes for reporting on the war with information that they had to know was fake. But the New York Times now is wringing their hands about the fake news from Donald Trump. Where were they when they were reporting the fake news that killed people in Iraq? Or when Clinton was president and the fake news that Hussein was threatening the world and it justified starving to death 500,000 Iraqi children, and then they defend it? And we talk about fake news now? Obama had the Center for Counterterrorism Communication, funded from the White House, whose purpose was to give PR, to correct the misinformation that the American people have about U.S. war abroad. It's just the IPI, OSI, GCI under another name. It's the CSSC. But it was Obama's, or this is normalcy theory. It was normal for the president. Fake news. So Trump's deporting all these people. First 2 months of the year, Trump deported 35,300 people. First 2 months of 2016, Obama supported 35,255 people. Obama was president, 2.7 million people were deported. And they worry about Trump's fake news. They didn't even give us the news about what Obama was doing. It's not fake news, it's the absence of any news. He deported all the kids back to Honduras. Obama deported all the kids back to El Salvador. Trump recognizes Sisi. They holler for human rights. Obama gave Sisi the military equipment that shot the people that were dying over human rights. Right now, well, Trump's continuing, but Obama didn't even take time for the Saudis to go back to Riyadh to refuel. Obama made sure the planes were refueled in the air with American bombs, with pilots that were trained by the United States to drop bombs on Yemen. There's some fake news. There was no terror threat in Yemen. There is no civil war in Yemen. It is a war of invasion by Saudi Arabia that was supported by the Obama administration. The fake news goes on, it gets deeper, it goes on. The media participates in this. The media participates in this. They do it by collaborating with the two political parties that run the United States, or the two political parties that run France, or I don't know how many they have here, two political parties that run Greece, because they accept them as legitimate sources. Even when they know, when they can fact check that what they're being told in the press conference is not true. They knew that the little tubes that were supposed to be for nuclear weapons that were coming from Niger that Colin Powell told the American, they knew that was not true. But they reported because they're reporters. And they reported the quote accurately. But to quote a lie accurately is not doing your job, unless your job is to report the quote accurately. And I would argue that's pretty much the job of professional journalists and commercial media in the United States and France and Britain and the rest. They use the sources that are provided by the two political parties and the agencies. And they use the location that is comfortable for the media. The location that they report on the news is very seldom where the war or where the problems are. It's more likely to be from the home country or away from the action. And they do it also, finally, with the ideology that makes possible the acceptance of this fake news. And there are two of those. One is that the world is under threat from terrorism, and the second is that there has to be humanitarian interventions. If there is one thing that I think that marks currently where we are, is that fake news is the primary motive for U.S. foreign policy. Fake news is the primary activity of U.S. diplomacy. Thanks to Mark for getting us up to 1895. I only gave you a half a dozen. Think about Iran, think about Guatemala, think about the Dominican Republic, think about Chile, think about Nicaragua, think about Venezuela today, think about Bolivia today, think about Uruguay today, think about Brazil today, think about when they complain about WikiLeaks must have gotten it from Russia to expose what the Democratic Party did with those files. Remember the files? Did anybody ask if those files were accurate? I don't give a damn where they came from. I want to know why was the Democratic Party doing those illegal things. But they shifted the discussion to this is Russian intervention. The United States has intervened in every election since World War II in almost every country on the face of the earth, but the New York Times is concerned about Russian intervention in the American election?
1 minute?
Good. We don't have time to talk about solutions here, but it seems to me there's a couple things. One is to break the legitimacy of the two political parties in the United States and to break the legitimacy of the market that's based on profits that denies our own humanity. That means breaking the control over the media that produces the fake news or produces the claims that we're looking at fake news. The second part is for those people that do not know, and that's a campaign of media literacy, which as academics we can approach by talking about who owns this media, who uses those practices, who supplies them with the information, who are the news framers. It should all be open to democracy. It should be open to citizens' control.
Thank you very much. That's a very emotional presentation on fake news. I thought we should not be so strong because it's the end of the day, but he shaped us up. Now the third presentation is from Neil Fitzpatrick. Is he here? Okay. From McGill University, Canada, undersea journalism struggle to survive in the post-truth era. So you have 10 minutes to impress us.
Thank you. I'm not sure about the rest of you, but I could use a drink right now. I changed my presentation here about 6 times in the last 20 minutes, so I'm not going to give any more history. And I'm not going to give any more examples of fake news because I think there's more than enough to go around. I will give you one example of something that I came across today in just a moment, but I did want to talk a bit about the media. As a former journalist, I still consider myself a journalist. I know it's a dirty word to a lot of people. I think that whenever I tell someone I am a journalist or was a journalist, I get a number of different comments, some more positive than others. And when I teach my students who are aspiring journalists to have a thick skin because they are in for a tough haul. Trust in journalists is down, way down, for all the reasons that my two colleagues just mentioned. It's difficult to be a journalist these days. It's difficult to educate journalists these days because we have to instill in them this desire to still tell the truth, to find ways to tell the truth. This is not an easy thing to do. Young people are cynical. Young people don't see the world the way older people do. So to tell them to go out and seek the truth and make an honest living at it is a big challenge. But I would encourage you, if you are involved in journalism education, to keep doing that. Because one of the solutions to fake news, to me, in my view, is to tell the truth, to find ways to tell the truth. Now, it may not be at the White House level. It may not be at the Greek Prime Minister level, but it may be in your neighborhood. We need reporters, we need journalists to tell stories that are affecting us day to day, and to tell them in an honest way, and to tell them to go back to journalistic basics and tell the stories the way we teach them to tell stories, to find both sides of the stories, to find different sources, to present both angles. Things that just don't happen anymore. And they don't happen a lot, I'll admit, because of a variety of reasons. But one of the reasons is, and we talked about it in some of the other sessions today, the economy. Many newsrooms are a fraction of the size that they were 10 or 15 years ago. I worked in newsrooms that went from 30 or 40 reporters down to 20 or less. And yet these remaining reporters are still expected to tell the stories. In this era of social media, however, they're not telling the stories the way they used to 15 or 20 years ago. If you're a reporter and I send you out on a story, you're not just expected to go out and take notes and then come back, put your story together, and present it to your audience. No. I'm expecting you to go to the news conference or the event, whatever it is. I want you to be live tweeting that news conference. I want you to be taking pictures and tweeting those pictures out. Maybe you can do a Facebook Live for me while you're there too. In the meantime, don't forget to gather all the facts of what the people are telling you, because you have to put a story together later. Well, we might need you to do a live interview too after the news conference. And then you can come back to your newsroom and start putting your main story together for that night's news or that next day's newspaper. Oh, and we need you to do that every day. And maybe more than one story every day. That's the reality now in small newsrooms, large newsrooms everywhere. Now, I'm not asking for your pity. I'm not asking for your sympathy. But I'm just telling you that's the reality for journalists these days. Is they're being tasked with more and more and more to do. And as a result, sometimes accuracy will suffer. So to teach young journalists to get both sides of the story, to find the voices to help them tell a story, to double source a story, something as simple as that. I worked for the CBC in Canada for a number of years, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. It's the public broadcaster. There's a lot of problems with it. But one of the good things it does, it has a journalistic ethics guide that all the reporters, all the journalists that work for us is expected to adhere to. And one of the things it says in this journalistic standards and practices document is, our commitment to accuracy and integrity means we try where possible to verify the information with a second source. And there may be times when more than two sources are required. Our stories are based on information we have verified. Wherever possible, our stories use first-hand, identifiable sources, participants in an event, or authenticated documents. In my experience as a journalist in Canada, though, I don't think this double sourcing policy, I think this double sourcing policy rather is the exception and not the rule. Most media organizations, most journalists do not have to adhere to any sort of policy like this, and that's a problem. I'd rather hear from all of you, so I'm going to just stop after one more thing, because I think you all have a lot of questions, and I'd be happy to try to answer them as will my colleagues, but I do want to point out one thing. Today, just after the morning session, where I spoke about fake news actually, I was on Twitter, and a story came across on Twitter that caught my eye. Because the headline, you'll love this, it said, "Fake news, echo chambers, and filter bubbles, under-researched and overhyped." This literally happened moments after I gave my presentation on the serious impact of fake news. It's all overhyped. The sub-headline, which is the secondary headline, said, "Don't panic. An international survey finds concerns about fake news are overblown." Okay, I'll read on, because the story detailed that a survey was conducted of how people use search engines and social media to find information about stories, to look for more information about those stories that they see. Just as I mentioned this morning, look for other sources. Don't just rely on that one headline. It says, "These concerns about fake news are much discussed but have not yet been thoroughly studied. What research does exist has typically been limited to a single platform, such as Twitter or Facebook. Our study of search and politics in 7 nations, which surveyed the United States, Britain, France, Germany, Italy, Poland, and Spain in January of this year, found these concerns to be overstated, if not wrong. In fact, many internet users trust search engines to help them find the best information, check other sources, and discover new information in ways that can burst filter bubbles and open echo chambers." They surveyed 14,000 people. Problem solved. Except, what I didn't see on the Twitter story, when I went to the actual website version of the story, opened it up, there was a side column with more information about the author and the study. And I won't name the author or his university, but here's what it says in the fine print on the side of the web story. Again, not visible on the Twitter story. "The author received funding from Google through the university to conduct the survey on which these findings are based. However, Google did not design the study, questionnaire, analysis, or findings. The opinions are those of the author and not any organization that supported this research." So, the way I see it, this is fake news about fake news. You could argue differently. I can send you the link to the story, or if you're on Twitter, you can look for it yourself. But I guess my point is, this is what we're dealing with today. Not just journalists, but academics, teachers, too many opinions, too many conflicting opinions out there for us to deal with. So as educators, I really think it's important we educate ourselves, pass this information on to our students, so they can, young people, the younger generation, can better identify what's real, what isn't, how do you research a story, how do you find the information for yourself. So I'll end there.
Thank you very much. Get 9 minutes, so not 10 minutes, that's good. So it gives me. Thank you very much. I like truth, reality. I thought that what is important is the interpretation of truth and the interpretation of reality. There are too many realities, too many truths. My truth might be different from your truth. So I'm not sure that these words, and that's what creates fake news or fake facts. The interpretation of that. Nietzsche said that. There are no facts, that's the interpretation. Anyway, of course, if you, as I say, because I teach statistics, I used to teach statistics. Statistics never lie. People lie using statistics. So it's, the facts never, and there are a lot of fake facts, but people that they use it, people that they consume it, they know, most of them, that it's fake. It serves other interests. Now, we move to India. Madhusi Srinivastan. Did I say it correct?
No.
No.
That's all right.
But I think you can correct me on that. And Sipra Toka, the series journalism struggle to survive in the post-truth. Oh, no, sorry. You see the blurry lines and sharp divides India's encounter with fake facts. You see, age does not come alone. Fortunately.
So,
You can use the microphone there because some people are deaf at the end.
I prefer not to. Can you hear me? I think I'm sufficiently loud. Okay, sir.
But you should count your notebook a bit, if not once again too hot. It's in the light. It might get too hot. If you turn a little bit your notebook.
Mainly a blurry
The
line.
notebook.
Okay,
The
okay.
computer.
So what I'll do is, you want me to observe
There's a reflection in there.
Yeah.
That's how now.
We see more at this age.
That's all right?
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, your time is running now.
That's not fair. Right. So I'm going to speak with, in the specific context of what exactly is happening in India. Take a quick look at these headlines, you know. And as I've said, there's a method in the madness over there. UNESCO declares PM Modi the best prime minister. He is our fairly new prime minister. UNESCO declares Jana Gana Mana the best national anthem. That's our national anthem. UNESCO declares new rupees 2000 note best currency in the world. There was demonetization, old currency notes were scrapped and a new set of currency notes were introduced. New note has GPS chip to detect black money. Nehru government, that's way before the independence and thereafter, immediately after independence, has stood like a banyan tree. And who says this? Apparently Mark Tully, the former BBC India bureau chief. Salt shortage in India. Think of the Indian peninsula and the kilometers, thousands of kilometers of coastline that we have, but salt shortage. Okay? Aircrafts were invented in the Vedic age. I spoke about it just a little while ago. Now there is a method in the madness. If we are constantly looking at UNESCO to endorse and ratify that we are the best in the world, it should give you an indication of what kind of fake news is circulating and why exactly it is doing so. In our case, it's not Facebook, it's not Twitter. Though of course we have 148 million Facebook users and over 22 million Twitter accounts, but that's limited to very few people, though they are very potent, undoubtedly. We don't get Facebook doesn't get as much advertising revenue from Indian Facebook users as it does from Facebook users elsewhere in the world, which is why Facebook is not really as important in India. What's important is WhatsApp. It's fast, it's free, and it's there on India's 300 million smartphones. We love technology. We are not necessarily very scientific in temperament, but we love technology, right? And it's encrypted end to end, and you can't control and track what exactly flows through. Is fake news only traveling through WhatsApp? No, WhatsApp is not the only conduit. Look at the way things are. Volatile emotions, demonization of the 14% minority of Muslims in India. Islamophobia is not just the prerogative of the rest of the world. We have it too. So, and we have loudspeakers on mosques and temples. So you just have to announce in a village over the loudspeaker that somebody, a Muslim, has killed a cow, and there'll be communal frenzy in that village. I am not just saying this because it came out of the top of my head. This actually happened, and a poor man who had stored meat in his refrigerator, it has still not been proved whether the meat was mutton or it was beef, but he was lynched to death on account of that item of news. So we don't really need to depend on social media. We've been doing it for a long time now, and we've been doing it very, very well indeed. Is it, Jean-Paul Sartre had once said, we are all part victims and part accomplices. Those who perpetrate such news, they are of course the accomplices. But those of us who believe in it, we are victims too. What exactly happens? Why is this happening? Social media in India has become a contested and contextual terrain. It's polarized because there are political and cultural differences. I just spoke about this a little while ago. There is, after a long time, a different kind of government at the center. It's towards a right-wing government. And all those who have left-leaning inclinations, even those who do not have left-leaning inclinations but are uncomfortable with the ideology of the people at the helm, they are systematically, through a well-orchestrated campaign, trolled on the social media. Now, I do not know whether this is also a part of fake news, but the fact remains that we hear of this constantly, that there is a well-orchestrated campaign, and this is carried out through a batch of technically savvy trolls who have been employed by the political party in power. You know, I remember reading something that give a man a mask and he becomes his true self. That's exactly what's happening. It's borderless technology and it gives you anonymity. When you are behind a mask, it's like you went spleen, and social media becomes, like one journalist has said, a swage pit. All kinds of malicious and extremely damning, misogynistic, racist, hear all of these. Hear all of these messages are constantly on social media, and people are actually scared. There is also an attempt to fabricate a kind of a glorious legacy. That legacy, part of it is true, but part of it is something that we need to tell ourselves. You know, culture is the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves. We are telling ourselves a lot of stories. Some of those stories we need to tell ourselves to reassert who we are, to shape and define our identities. And that's why fake news is finding favor with so many people who have been marginalized so far, but now are feeling the need to come back to the mainstream. And the news editors are constantly under pressure to produce trending content. That's one reason, because of the TRPs, because there is a need to capture audiences, to grab eyeballs. Frankly, like it was pointed out, journalistic ethics have been put on the back burner. Who cares? In any case, there's so much of competition. One thing that possibly hasn't been spoken of so far is the semantics, the meaning making. What kind of language do you use when you report something? You and I may see the same thing, but the choice of words, my diction in reporting that which has happened, can give it a different perspective altogether. And that's exactly, I remember Mark Twain was once passing through British customs with his friend, and it was taking a long time. Twain at that time, I believe, this story itself may be apocryphal, I believe he said to the customs officer, I'm related to the Prince of Wales. And they let him through immediately. Later on, his friend said, how could you tell a lie of this kind? Twain said, well, I did not. I belong to the family of Homo sapiens. So does the Prince of Wales. And I am not really telling a lie, am I? So, and then the author, in the essay in which this appeared, I don't remember the name, he said, it's misleading reservation of an explanatory fact. That's exactly what a lot of people are doing. It's not fake news, it's my take on the news. So that's the problem. You see, and now my title comes from this last. There is a blurring of lines between what is history, what is myth, and what's fact. So there was a queen called Padmavati in the state of Rajasthan in India. Beautiful, and she was lusted after by Alauddin Khilji, one of the many Muslim invaders who came to India. This happened 5-6 centuries back. Now we have heard from established historians that the entire legend of Padmavati was created by bards in order to build up a kind of what shall we say, a tradition of valor for the people of that state. But recently, when a film was being made on Padmavati and Alauddin Khilji, and this story was given a slightly different take, sets were vandalized, the film crew and the director were beaten up. So that's what I said this morning. It's my truth. I choose to believe in it. Who are you to dispute it? When deep-seated emotions clash with observable facts, it's always the emotions that override anything one might observe. You see, it's...
1 minute, 1 minute.
Yes, I'm almost done.
Thank you very much.
It's just that I'm finished in a minute. You know, it's you can't trust your eyes when your imagination is out of focus. Mark Twain had said that. And with that, I would say that what is the country doing? Sometimes they black out internet completely. They turn it off in order to stop the spread of rumors. Otherwise, there'll be communal strikes. There are WhatsApp group administrators, there are district magistrates who've said that they are liable for prosecution if they circulate false stories. If journalists are making efforts, and there are websites dedicated to checking, verifying news. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our last speaker for tonight, it's Anta Rosu-Kalni, Associate Professor in Head of Communications at the Department of Riga, starting in West Latvia. She's going to talk about the Latvian model of disinformation, person-speaking media, invented fake stories, and the hyperactive internet troll. You have the floor, madam, for 10 minutes.
Thank you.
Welcome.
No, I don't have any presentation. I decided not to damage any brains in the PowerPoint again. This is not a fake news. This comes from science about the PowerPoint. Influence, well, like you, I tried to change my presentation many times. So, various versions of fake news have been expressed already, but I'm afraid that I'm the only person in this panel discussion, in this roundtable discussion, who represents the country where fake news and misinformation have been used as a part of information war, as a part to express information of real military activities. This is the reason why actually it's not really comfortable and familiar role for me, but this is the reason why I decided to add some details, some context, and then I'll tell about the three main forms of fake information we can observe in Latvia and also in other Baltic countries. I would say that the result of this big flow of fake news, and not only the fake news, but propaganda-fulfilled news in Baltic states, is that I personally know many families who plan, who have developed real plans how to escape either Latvia or other Baltic states. They have some friends and they decide who will keep the full tank with the fuel and who will get some food. In that moment when they will have to go to escape to Latvia, and they know exactly how many hours, the number of hours, how long time does it take to get to Scandinavia or Germany, where they think that this would be a very more safe place for their family. I personally live very close to the army base where the NATO soldiers are living in, and I met them, American and Canadian soldiers, in supermarkets on regular basis, and in that region, they're all pizzerias and cafeterias, they are flourishing because of increase of customers. This is a good news of this context. But still there are like really serious part of that, not only people who still who receive all those message that said on daily basis. I would say that every weekend we got a new real news that there are military activities really closed, or borders, or even some activities in the Baltic Sea from the Russian side. And to explain how fake news or misinformation are damaging the information environment in Baltic states, and particularly in Latvia, I should say that no one from the colleagues from this roundtable, you haven't expressed any idea of the aims of the fake news. But in Baltic states there are like at least 2 or 3 really clear messages behind fake news. The first message is that Latvia or other Baltic states, they are failed states. The independence that was restored from 1990 was like a huge failure. This is one part of that message. And the second part is that everything that comes from United States and NATO itself, and everything that comes from European Union is really stupid, wrong, it's damaging our culture. And yeah, those are like main messages. Those are also part of propaganda messages. And now I would like to speak on those 3 forms of fake information. As a media scholar and media researcher, I have been involved in 3 really important projects during last 2 or even 3 years. I was researching the internet trolls, Russian internet trolls in Latvian media, internet media, and then I was involved in the research project that tried to analyze resilience of Baltic media in this information environment where there are big ongoing, constant wave of ready-made propaganda message that comes from Russian media, and not only from those classic media, but also from other like Trolls Factory and also from news agencies. And then the third project was where I, together with my colleagues, tried to analyze the difference, how the current situation is explained in Latvian language and Russian language media, because it's really important to understand that in Baltic states we have about, it depends of course of the country, but we have about 1/3 Russian-speaking inhabitants, and the media environment is divided by language. And we realized at the very beginning, and every audience member who are familiar to read news in Latvian, in Russian, or Estonian, Lithuanian, and Russian language, you can really quickly recognize that there are absolutely different explanation of the same events in Latvian, Estonian, Lithuanian, and in Russian language. And there is no any like vicious story behind it, because if you know how those newsrooms of internet news sites are working, they are really under the very high level need of new information, and they can get this really high quality news packages every day from either RIA Novosti or other sources of Russian media, and they just republish. That information, but because it's cheaper, they don't need to translate, and they can easily fulfill all the parts of news. Okay, that was sorry. Do I have like 5 minutes more?
5 minutes?
Okay, thanks.
Actually, no, you have only 1 minute.
Oh my God.
Well, 1.5.
That was like, okay, that was, sorry, like scholar, I can speak on any topic like 1.5 hours. So this is my format. Sorry for that, that was the introduction, but. Okay, three main forms. Russian media published in Latvia, and Russian media which are used in Latvia, but they are coming from Russia. They used to publish like big amount of false information, misinformation. They try to spread this information via social networks and to pretend that they have a bigger audience, full with the invented information. What is very interesting that Russian language media in Latvia, they interpret those fake pieces of information even in a nastier way than they were originally published. For example, there is just the last example that Mr. Trump decided not to finance Baltic states anymore, which is really important news. And then Russian media put it like, Latvia is dying, there is nobody interested in this country. And this is how Russian-speaking media, who are part of Latvian media system, they use to interpret those news. Second form is those new social media businessmen who don't know anything about the media, about the principles, but they just click by think any piece of news. They invent very negative, politically fulfilled news on current events. Usually there are not any small piece of the truth inside those news, but they explain themselves that this is like entertainment, they don't take it too seriously. And the third form is those news that comes from trolls factories. We call those people hybrid trolls, not real trolls, because real trolls don't have any ideology. One day they are pro-Putinists, other day they again contra-Putinists or pro-Trumpists or contra-Trumpists, it doesn't matter. But hybrid trolls, they probably you are familiar with the style. After every new event, like yesterday's elections in France, those professional trolls, those workers, receive a ready-made package how they should interpret information on that or this current event.
Thank you.
Sorry?
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
We have 5 interesting presentations as an introduction. Now we have 2 options. One option is to end here and then go for the Greek night. I can see people want to kill me. And the other option is to continue the discussion here for half an hour, and then we can continue after during the Greek night and have groups there and the discussion. Is anybody that wants to show off and to take a or ask a question. You see how I couldn't get down? Okay, I was kidding. I'm still half an hour. If you want, I can talk. I can talk for half an hour. Any questions? I don't want to ask you questions. If you have a statement, you want to make a statement, you think that you have something to say about fake news. I mean, if I can summarize my receipt of the 5 presentations just as a motivation, is that fake news is not new. Of course, we went back on to the 19th century, and I think in India 500 years ago, but you can go 2,500 years. Fake news, even though we didn't get the solution because we didn't have time, is nothing that, it's something that can be fixed. I said in my introduction that there is fake audience by people that for pecuniary incentive they want to believe or search for news that verify their preconception or their business interest, because I don't see people are still unnecessary information, verification of information. Just to give you an example, throughout the years that we organized this conference, always Greece and Athens was unstable. But I was surprised to see, because of the social media, people writing me through an email, for example, a professor from North America, in 2010, when all these revolutions started in Greece, and a lot of people hoped that Greece would change Europe, and obviously nothing, of course, happened. And she was asking a question out of fear, that read somewhere in the news that hooded, animals, they were going around and burn alive tourists. And I said, okay, I didn't say, just give me the name of one tourist that was burned alive, so to verify it. And 2 years ago, an Italian professor, it had nothing to do with Italian or American, it has to do with how people believe. They said that, read in the news, that the Italian Ministry of External Affairs, for a moment, gave a directive to the Italians not to come to Greece. Because we have to be stupid to believe that within the European Union. Because on Monday, we had a conference, after the referendum, a civil war will start in Greece. And she was serious. And she canceled the trip because she was scared it would be trapped. This is fake news that have real effects. They believe it, and no incentive, they believe it. And the power of the fake, but it goes back many, many years. Any comment before I will continue? Okay. Just identify yourself because we tape you and then we'll make some moderations and fading and upload.
Okay. So I think they were all great presentations, but I think one of the ways that we can look at this, if we want to change what's going on, I think what Neil Fitzpatrick said was to look at the education part of it. That if we're going to bring forward more journalists, we need to train them in the way that they need to be trained and not to give up on that. Because I think that's very, very critical. I mean, there are many other ways that we can look at this and make those changes, but I really believe that education and the start in the journalism schools, anywhere, it doesn't
Can I
have
change
to
the
be.
word education to pedagogy?
Pardon me?
I can change the word education to pedagogy because
Yeah.
pedagogy is education
Yes,
plus
pedagogy.
ethics.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is the education. I can have an education and not be
Yeah.
more.
So the curriculum, the pedagogy, the approach, the methodology, all of those need to be reconsidered when we look at how we teach journalism.
But
Because
it's too late at the university level. I mean, I'm not the normal change. It's too late at the university level. This should start at the elementary level to create ethical citizens. Yes.
I just wonder if a solution for this is not to do and let journalism be what journalism has been for most of its existence until the 20th century. And that's, let's just embrace the partisan press again. Problem solved.
So we'll have
The,
a different press for each ideology.
Correct, yes. This has been most of journalism's history. You have newspapers for political parties, and they report only on that party, and the other party is a bunch of scoundrels. The other party reports the same on the opposite party. Special interest papers come up, that's what they do, and when people
But I think you have that in the United States, and we have that in others.
We don't have that formally anymore in the US, which is why we're talking about pedagogy and education and all these things that we're supposed to be doing. And with the rise of the internet, we're becoming much more partisan. And I think if we embrace the old paradigm again, fake news sort of roots itself out. It requires one thing of the reader, though, and that is if you want to be informed on both sides, you're not reading a news source anymore. Because there is no single credible news source that we would call unbiased or so fair anymore. It doesn't exist. We've heard it said here, and we're talking about it when we're worried about fake news. So
how do you teach it? Usually I'm an economist, so when I taught, I said on one hand and on the other hand.
yes.
I mean, that's why I have two hands, so if I said, I'll say that. So you give two opinions. I mean, we shouldn't do that when we teach. We shouldn't give alternative opinions. That's, I think.
Who should give up? Sorry.
Huh?
Who should give up? I did not catch what you said.
Let me repeat if I remember.
Yeah.
I said, when I teach,
Yeah.
I mean, usually say on one, I'm an economist, on one hand and on the other hand.
Yeah.
So when you teach, you should give two different opinions or three opinions, and don't say this is what it is. In economics, it's very difficult to do that because there is one approach, but there are actually 5 or 6 approaches. So you can say there is this mainstream, and there are some others that they claim this, and like it or not, they say that. So this you give the students 2 alternatives, 3, 4 interpretations. You want to say something? Someone raise their hand over there? No. Any from there? Yes.
Just
Yeah.
go for it.
Children it's have wrong stories. The stories from children are fake news. In the ant nest there is no males, and the ant film there is males living in the nest. So the children became to believe in fake news since they was too small. We need to criticize the children's histories books. This is the beginning of the fake news.
But you have the choice for your children to buy another interpretation of a history book. There are so many choices now. I mean, you have children, for example, can say, okay, or you watch the news when I had my children and there was something, I would start laughing when they were saying a serious and saying, ha 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 ha. And when serious thing, I knew that was fake. And my children laughed, why do you laugh? Because it's a good comedy. I said. So this, I think you have the choice to buy alternative, whatever you said here. We have so many choices. Even the internet, we find choices. So you can download it.
But I think the point is you have to be aware of the choices. And that's also why I think that it's not really about changing journalistic education. I think journalist education is quite fine in many countries. The problem is the situation under which journalists have to work afterwards. Theoretically, they know what they should be doing. And I think the main problem is that we don't really have a media education in general in the population. How to deal with media, to identify sources, and that's the main problem. I think our journalists are trained quite well, generally. I think the problem really is how to train people to identify media, to know how media are constructed, and to know what you just say, how is the information being constructed, why is it happening, and then you can judge what's happening there. Because what we are suddenly doing is say, if you have the different press, we think that every citizen is able to judge this himself and to say what's wrong, what's right. And to be at that point, I think you need another media education and media preparation already at school. But the problem is that all parties who are involved now do not really have an interest in that because they want to get through with their false information. I think that's a problem.
Okay. Any other comment, question? People are tired.
Just one question for the speakers.
Yeah, well, forget about the speakers now, we have more speakers. Let's motivate people to speak first.
Yeah, I have a question, actually.
Oh.
So, okay.
No, okay, it's okay.
Okay, so I'm curious, as the phenomenon of fake news continues, of how it has impacted minority communities. In particular.
Minority?
Yeah, definitely minorities. So has anybody seen any research on its impact within these communities?
So anybody wants from the speakers or from the audience wants to respond up? Has any idea? What is a minority, by the way?
I said ethnic minority.
Ethnic minority.
Yes.
I know of religious minorities.
But see, yes, you mentioned something.
I know that there is palpable fear. There is fear amongst them. Because somebody starts a rumor and they would be the victims. That's one thing. Some of them cozy up to those who are the perpetrators of those crimes. Because if you can't beat them, then you join them. So there are different coping mechanisms.
I think we should make a fake news. If it gives rise to some real effects, then it's not fake news anymore. Fake news is something, what will not believe that. I received actually someone missed this conference. He asked me to read a 5-page note. He doesn't want to leave his country because he's a professor, because he believes that he cannot go back. And those people say, those that they leave the country at the border, they take their passports, and he wanted me to read the 5 pages. I said, look, I didn't respond to him, I don't have to be here to read it. But this is a real story. Of course, this is fake, based on fake news. He's left, it had nothing to do with religion, and the excuse was because of the religion. But he's left, and they find that as an excuse to imprison him. And it's a very close by country. This is not fake news anymore. This is a life threat. Or people who put in prison. This is a real effect. And of course, if there is such demand, they will find an excuse, with or without fake news. Yes?
Yeah, it's hard to make generalizations about where things are going, but I offer an observation that I think things are going to get worse before they get better, if they ever get better. One reason is, at least in the United States, there are a lot of Americans who don't really care what the truth is. What they want is something that confirms what they believe. So you can educate them all you want, but they're still going to want to see something confirm what they already believe. That said, I think we're also seeing the development of media toward a future that will be increasingly hard to differentiate from reality. We're going to have, already we have a generation of things like virtual reality and augmented reality or smartphones that can embed all kinds of digital representations that can have depth and animation and stereoscopic imagery and sound, and we're moving toward a future where we'll be able to do that without having a physical device. So it can be projected, it can have apparent physicality, and for a lot of people it will become a place where they totally immerse themselves in this interactive multisensory space, and it will seem completely real. And we've seen our talk earlier today, someone was giving about how people are essentially becoming very addicted to a lot of media already, whether it's binge watching shows or whatever. I think we're going to have a future form of media that will be really engaging for a large number of people in that sense. And it will be hard for them to tell whether it's real or not. And if it's propaganda that's being generated to promote a point of view or an idea, it will be very hard for people to even imagine that it's not real. So I think we're going to see in the next 20 years this problem get exponentially worse rather than better. One, because people will think, yeah, it confirms what I really believe is true. And then second, it will look so real and it will seem so real, and they'll be able to touch it and smell it and then enter into it and interact with it. So they won't be able to, nobody will be able to convince them that it wasn't real. They say, no, I was there. I did the thing.
This confirmed my hypothesis, so I like it. So that's good news. Any other comment of course, I'm not following the chair, because it's a roundtable discussion, so the chair talks, and that's why I don't chair sessions. And you should not follow the example tomorrow. I can talk forever. Any other comment? Are you writing notes so you can? Are you writing notes so you can say something, or just?
I'm just writing notes.
Yeah. So I like to read, right? Yeah. Yes.
David, I want to kind of counterbalance David, because I'm optimistic about the future. I mean,
But he's optimistic, but he takes some time.
yeah, yes.
That's what he said, huh?
Well, it kind of depends. I mean, it's kind of like in the Matrix where you take the red pill or the blue pill. It sounded to me like you were John was saying that
A little bit of that.
that there will be these media universes, virtual realities that you live in, and then it doesn't really matter because you're not outside of that. And I think, I don't think that will be true for the mass of humanity. It may be true for a select people with many resources and much disposable income and disposable time. The other thing I would say is just in the last, I don't know how many years, we have witnessed to say that all the fake news in the world did not convince the Egyptians that Mubarak was good. All the fake news in the world did not convince them that Le Pen was good. All the fake news I mean, there's too many historical examples, and not long-range historical examples, immediate historical examples to say that there's reasons to be optimistic. And I think we do have an opportunity and an obligation to educate people, but it's not just, I agree that journalists are well taught, with the exception of they aren't necessarily taught about the political economy of the media that they're about to take a job in. And I think we do a disservice to our students when we don't explain to them also. It's like teaching a bunch of rabbits the difference between a carrot and a rutabaga and how to get there, and forgetting to tell them that Farmer John has a shotgun sitting on the porch, right? So we can do all the educating we want, but you have to step back and understand that we live in a society that corporations are considered individuals in the United States, and the IMF is run by corporations, which is why we have austerity in Greece and why we have police shooting black people in the streets of Chicago. And if we don't say that, all the education in the abstract is kind of not, I would say it's lacking the part of pedagogy that you're saying.
But the austerity in Greece is fake news. No, not kidding. It's fake news. It's debatable whether we have austerity measures. But anyway, that's, or we have a humanitarian crisis. It's debatable. And actually the facts show otherwise. But anyway, this is, it's not about this. Any other comment?
Just a question also for everybody, how do you see that? For me, fake news already itself as a notion is fake news. Because for me, fake news isn't a neutral wording. It's a wording that has become popular with Donald Trump now.
Right.
And it's a way of, we can talk false news or whatever, but it's saying that the traditional news media are not reporting correctly about him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a notion we just take like now to criticize what he's doing. And I think that's dangerous. And we have to see that fake news, from my perspective, it's an ideological wording. It's no more a neutral one now. But I would like to know what other people in this room think.
Well,
I would say
because I have a good conception of work. I don't want to verify whether what we are saying, it's tautological with what I believe. I believe that I don't really care about fake news. I care about dangerous people. Like, for example, the demagogues, the populists, they can go up and they can say everything, and then you have thousands of people believing them, and then they move together to do things. This is more dangerous than someone believing.
I would agree with that, but I think just using, what I would like to know what other people think here, just using fake news, just in this way, I think already is making a fake news and helping Donald Trump to get through with his way of thinking. And I would propose to say false news or whatever, and not fake news. I see some knocking, perhaps you can get something like that.
I agree, and I was going to bring that up as well, is that the kind of mirror concern that I have is this ability to use the term fake news when you don't agree with what is being said in the news media. It's not fake, it's just you're not in agreement with it, or it puts you in a bad light. And so I do think that there's that other concern of using the term when we're saying fake news, we're talking about lies. But other people will use fake news as that's not a perspective I agree with.
Alternative
And
facts.
that's not a lie, it's just, I don't agree with you. And so I do think we have to be very careful in using that label, because it gets misused.
A lie that is not a result of misconception, a lie that has serves a purpose. So it's a strategic,
Well, I think there's lies and not lies, and I think some people are calling things that aren't lies fake news because it doesn't fit their agenda.
Do you remember alternative facts? If you think about the inauguration of all things.
Okay.
Best visited inauguration ever. The best presidency ever. So interesting.
Okay. Anybody else wants to impress us?
Can I add one more definition of fake news? Because I actually agree with what you and you said, and I disagree with those who think that fake news are everything which is wrong or mistaken or something which doesn't fit to anybody's existing beliefs. And recently I was preparing a new course for critical thinking for journalists, and I was inspired by several sources, but then I found out one source, the two teachers from Washington University, probably you have heard of them. They are Carl Bergstrom and Jevin West, and they put this definition of fake news really straightforward. They said that we should call it bullshit. And they even have a course you can apply for the course calling bullshit. And I really like their definition of bullshit. And they said that a liar knows what is true, but he or she still wants to lie. But those people who provide bullshit, they don't care what is truth. And they don't care, they even don't care what is bullshit. They just bullshitting. And I find it's a good idea. Speaking about the perception and the influence of fake news, I believe that we have many misconceptions that we don't have enough data on the effects on fake news. Because we still have, but the society is not homogeneous, and people perceive different news in different way. And I think that this is like next step for any media and communication research to investigate the real influence of those news, different kinds of news, for particular events or generally fake information, because I didn't have that enough time. We have not only fake news in Baltic states, we have fake media outlets, we have fake journalists, those who just pretend journalists and they publish something, pretending as a journalist. It's like a complex story, it's not only about information.
Okay, anybody else? To wrap up.
Yeah, I would just add that I agree with many of the points, but I think the difference now, I don't want to harp on Donald Trump again, but he has become the most blatant example of spreading false information, fake news, whatever you want to call it, from his high perch. And he's able to do that. He bypasses the media altogether and just says what he thinks. And is it strategy? Some people say yes, and some people say he's up in the middle of the night throwing out random thoughts.
But if you said what you think, that's not fair.
Yeah, I was going to say, he's not a journalist, he's a politician, so of course he's going to say, right?
True, but his influence on social media is huge.
Right, but so is Khloe Kardashian's.
It is. And that's my point, is with social media, Donald Trump or a social media influencer like the Kardashians can change people's minds. They can set the agenda and get us thinking in a different way.
Right.
Whether it's accurate, whether it's true,
Right.
or not.
But they're also not journalists, that's what I'm saying.
Everybody's a journalist now.
Well, I don't know. My wife was a journalist, but she'll tell you she's not.
Yeah, in the big sense, in the big picture. But
Yeah.
everybody can be a journalist now.
Well, we can all influence things, but I don't know that we want to lower that bar for a journalist that I can
certainly
influence
don't.
you. Yeah.
Okay, it's time to end this roundtable symposium, whatever. I'll see you tonight to see what you are coming. And thank you very much. I consider from the number of people that are here, that's a fact, that was quite successful. We did not have such an attendance. Thank you very much.